Yeah, the financial crisis which is hitting us and has been around the world for around a year and a half by now is starting to hit Latin America in a delayed fashion, but it is really hitting fairly hard.
For many of the countries, the external situation is getting more and more fragile as a result of falling exports, falling commodity prices, falling remittances, and also the drying up of the credit markets at the international level. And in this case, it was primarily not of their doing.
I think that was one of the most important outcomes of the G20 was the G20, which are the top 20 economies of the world, representing about 90% of, if you will, world GDP, thinking about the impact of this economic crisis on those other countries which may not be part of the G20. Now, of course, Argentina is, Mexico is, and they were at the meeting. But they also made sure that those countries who were not sitting at the table were taken into account as well by providing for this funding through the IMF and through the regional banks.
When we talk about $1.1 trillion, first of all, it's not that the amounts will be available immediately, and certainly it will not be available to Latin America. My estimate is that Latin America will be getting probably in the order of $150 to $200 billion, which is a lot. It's about, I would say, 5 to 6% of the region's GDP. But it's not going to come all at once. First of all, there is a process, a very important process. The international organizations have to get the approval for the capital increase, and the countries have to put the money in.
Clearly, by having the summit follow this G20 meeting, which was not planned, of course, when the summit was scheduled, you do have a focusing.
But it's evident to everyone that the overarching issue that we are going to face in this summit is the economic crisis.
Now, the tone of the Summit of the Americas is going to change significantly from what we thought a month ago. I would say because of two factors. One is the sort of the permanent battle cry regarding Cuba and the United States, and the second is the reform of the world financial system and the need for support for the poorer and emerging countries of the world.
The number one priority will be the United States economy. And the most important thing the Obama administration can do for our hemispheric neighbors is to get our own economy going again.
It's important, I think President Lula echoed what Mac McLarty said, that we fix our economy. But it's not just fixing our economy, it's how we fix the economy.
There are two things that have not been mentioned, which suggest that maybe there's an agreement not to speak of them, so maybe I ought not. One is the fact that protectionism has reared its ugly head.
The 20 countries that have been represented in the G20, all of them have applied restrictive policies. So, in spite of all the wonderful type of statements that have been made by the members of the G20, it still is something that has to be worked on.
There are lots of things that can be done that would assist in preventing the crisis from getting much worse. And I think the World Bank has some thoughtful ideas, but working together, they're obviously going to be much better outcomes than if we pull apart. Most people don't know how much keeping markets open and permitting integration across borders creates efficiency, competition, and opportunity.
So I think there's been, at least rhetorically, a good line of speech, and that I think is well received on the part of Latin America. The key will be what does the U.S. do to, like we said at the beginning, to help countries implement policies that mitigate the impact of the crisis, which will translate into more fiscal space and more external space, not just for this year, but it will be necessary for several years perhaps, so that the adjustment is not so severe.
It makes everybody nervous because you really have to go and work hard on what comes next, but it still is a very sort of positive challenge that the region will confront in the summit because of all these announcements and actions that have been taken.